It's one of the biggest national security failures in U.S. history. Dozens of U.S. nuclear missiles went offline over the weekend. It happened at F.E. Warren Air Force Base, right outside of Cheyenne, Wyoming. This is home to 1/9 of the U.S. missile stockpile. Now, missiles similar to these ones you're seeing, lost the ability to communicate with the systems controlling them. Various alarm systems also temporarily stopped working. The cause of this failure is still unknown, but officials say it's nearly impossible for a person to hack the system, and they do not believe the act was intentional. Well, joining me for more on the story from Boston, Massachusetts, is Joseph Cirincione. He's the president of Plowshares Fund. Now, Joseph, I want to ask you, how did this happen exactly? We're hearing from different reports that national security interests, or national security in general, was not compromised. But 1/9 of the country's nuclear arsenal going out of power for a while, I mean, how did that happen, and why haven't we heard much about it?
Well, the very first thing to say is that we don't know yet what the full story is. The President of the United States himself just found out about it today, so we're just beginning to understand the seriousness of the incident. We're talking about losing communication with a whole squadron of intercontinental ballistic missiles. That's 50 ballistic missiles. These are missiles that can travel the ocean, span the continents in about 30 minutes. Each one of them is armed with a hydrogen bomb. They're designed actually to have 3 bombs per missile, 3 warheads per missile, but they've been downloaded to just 1. Each of these bombs is about 10 times the size of the bomb that destroyed Hiroshima. So you're looking at approximately 500 Hiroshimas of destructive force that was off the grid for about an hour, we're told. About an hour. We lost communication with them, could not control these missiles. Now, we're told that there was a backup system that was monitoring the missiles, and that we're told that there was no moment of panic at the Air Force, but they did consider this situation serious enough that they've reported it up to the chain of command. Everyone in superior position was notified this, including the President of the United States today.
Joseph, I want to ask you 2 questions in this one. That being, have we seen incidents like this before where nuclear material has either gone missing or showed up on different Air Force bases? And if this happened over the weekend, why is the President finding out about it on Tuesday?
Throughout the history of the nuclear age, there have been very serious incidents involving the loss of command and control over nuclear weapons. In fact, there are 9 nuclear weapons, hydrogen bombs, that the United States has lost that have never been recovered. Sunken ships, planes that crashed, etc. And that's just in the U.S. side. We don't have a history of what happened on the Russian side or any accidents involving the Chinese, for example. And 2 years ago, there was a very serious incident where we had 6 cruise missiles loaded on a B-52 bomber with nuclear warheads on them, weapons that were not supposed to have been loaded. They didn't know the nuclear weapons were on this B-52. The B-52 flew from North Dakota down to Louisiana and spent the night on a lightly guarded tarmac, guarded by little more than the usual security detail and a barbed wire fence. 36 hours, completely no control over these nuclear weapons. And the worst part, nobody knew they were gone. They were only discovered by a guard the next morning. So we have serious incidents of the U.S. Air Force losing command and control of weapons, each one of which is capable of destroying a major city. This is
Joseph?
A sign that, one, these weapons are starting to outlive their usefulness, that they're not getting the kind of care and attention that they need, and 2, that we're storing these missiles, these weapons, these ICBMs, in a state of readiness that is not justified by either the conditions in the world or the capabilities of the current systems. It's
Joseph, I want to ask you something very briefly. Something very briefly, if you don't mind. The START treaty, as you know, it's still waiting to be ratified. If you could just briefly tell me, how will this affect that treaty being ratified in Congress?
Well, it's likely to build the case for ratifying the treaty, because the treaty would verifiably reduce the number of nuclear weapons on both the Russian and the United States side and pave the way for additional treaties to bring these numbers down. It's time to retire these weapons from the Cold War, and we need to do this in a very careful and verifiable way.
Well, we'll have to see what comes from this story. It's just the beginning at this point. But that was Joseph Cirincione joining us from Boston, Massachusetts. He's the president of Plowshares Funds. It's great to have you.
Air Force.
Yes, I was in the Air Force.
Where were you when this was
El
happening?
famoso programa estadounidense de Larry King transmitió este fin de semana documentos y videos inéditos en que supuestamente un objeto volador no identificado se interpuso en la ruta que seguía un misil de prueba lanzado al espacio por el ejército de los Estados Unidos. Este es el momento en que se aprecia como el supuesto ovni derriba el misil. Según transmitió este programa de televisión el sábado anterior, videos y documentos demuestran que hace casi 35 años los extraterrestres se interesan en las armas de destrucción y sobre todo en misiles nucleares. Según los entrevistados, el ejército de los Estados Unidos se ha dedicado a ocultar cómo varios misiles han sido derribados por supuestos ovnis. Los UFO se han dedicado a estudiar los misiles desde hace 35 años y los Estados Unidos se han dedicado a ocultar que eso ocurre. Al menos en bases de 5 estados se conoce de esta información. Otros videos mostrados en ese mismo programa se aprecian supuestos avistamientos de objetos voladores no identificados cerca de sitios de donde se lanzan misiles. En 1967 estábamos lanzando un misil cuando observamos 5 luces. Después había una luz roja en el cielo. El piloto se comunicó y luego se quedó en silencio. Después el misil cayó. Pero sin duda, este es solo uno más de los avistamientos hechos por pilotos y militares estadounidenses en su trabajo cotidiano. En Internet se muestran otros momentos similares. Según los investigadores, los extraterrestres están muy interesados en los misiles y bombas atómicas. En nuestro país los avistamientos desde el aire no se han quedado atrás. Un piloto del AXA incluso tomó esta fotografía.
Cuando estaba descargando las fotos y organizándolas, me topé con que había un objeto no identificado sobre la aeronave a la cual yo estaba tomando la foto.
Otros pilotos ticos también han reportado avistamientos de ovnis. Según el programa estadounidense, seguirán revelando otros archivos secretos del ejército en las próximas entregas.
My name is Robert Solis. Contrary to what it says on the card, I was not a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. I was in the Air Force active duty after I graduated from the Air Force Academy in 1964 until 1971 and separated as a captain. In March of 1967, I was stationed at Malmstrom Air Force Base, Montana, as a missile launch officer, Minuteman Missiles. On an early morning of March 16th, 1967, I got a call from my security guard, primary security guard upstairs. We had about 6, as I recall, flight security airmen upstairs. I was downstairs 60 feet underground in a capsule monitoring and controlling 10 nuclear-tipped Minuteman missiles. I got a call that morning that they were seeing strange lights flying in the sky. I disregarded that call. I told them to call me when something more significant happened. I got another call subsequent to that call, and this time it was a more intense tone in the guard's voice. It was very clearly very frightened. He said there was a bright, glowing red object hovering outside the front gate. It was oval-shaped. He had all the other guards out there with their weapons drawn. Right after that call, I woke up my commander, who was on a rest period, Fred Mywald, a retired colonel now, and told him about the phone calls. As I was telling him about the phone calls, my weapons started going down, one after the other. They went into a no-go condition, what we call a no-go condition. They were unlaunchable. We lost somewhere between 6 and 8 weapons that morning within minutes of having received that second phone call of a UFO hovering outside the front gate. Again that morning, after reporting it to the command post, we were informed that a very similar incident happened at Echo Flight. I was at Oscar Flight. They lost all 10 of their weapons under similar circumstances, very similar circumstances, where UFOs were sighted over the launch facilities. They had maintenance crews and security crews out there that had spent the night, and they were reporting UFOs over those sites. And the commander of that flight was Eric Carlson. He also separated as a captain, and the deputy commander was Walt Fiegel. He retired as a lieutenant colonel. We have those witnesses that I just mentioned, the names I just mentioned, have spoken of this event before, and they will back up this story. We also have documentation that I received through FOA requests from the Air Force outlining the Echo Flight incident, and including in that documentation a reference to UFOs. We have telexes covering this incident, and in one telex it says the fact that no apparent reason for the loss of 10 missiles can be readily identified is cause for grave concern to this headquarters. This was from SAC headquarters. So we've got those telexes. I've got about 12 witnesses that will verify parts of this story, including of a man who investigated the incident afterwards for the Air Force, and you'll hear a little bit more about that from the next witness. And also another guard that witnessed a UFO in that same time period, and another officer who retired a full colonel who had other reports of UFOs. Ancillary to that, excuse me, I've got the complete report on a Minot, North Dakota incident. That was Minot Air Force Base, North Dakota, which happened in August of 1966. Very similar, UFOs sighted over missile silos, and also a UFO incident that was investigated by the Air Force immediately after our incident within a week. I'm willing to testify to the truth of all these matters that I've spoken about this in front of Congress under oath. Thank you.
In September of 1991, the Space Shuttle Discovery captured an unidentified object on film. What you're seeing now is actual footage shot by NASA cameras from that shuttle mission. Watch the top of your screen. Note the object that moves from right to left. 2 mysterious flashes, and it makes an immediate 135-degree turn and accelerates. This is followed by a strange streak of light, which seems to narrowly miss the unknown object. This dramatic footage has been in dispute since it was shot.
I studied it extensively over maybe a 2-year period at least.
University of Nebraska physicist Jack Kasher worked for nearly 10 years in the research and development of a Star Wars defense system for the upper atmosphere. His quantitative analysis of the NASA footage concludes that the UFO cannot be explained as a natural phenomenon.
It's clearly above the atmosphere and air glow of the Earth. It maneuvers, it changes direction, it accelerates, and so the only thing really left is spacecraft.
Others think this object is simply a small ice particle floating a few feet from the shuttle. Ice particles are a common waste product of the numerous shuttles that have orbited Earth. But Kasha is convinced NASA has recorded strong evidence of a large, intelligently controlled alien space vehicle.
One of the very strange things that happens is that the main object actually stops and sits there for half a second before it accelerates back up to the right. An ice particle could not do that. If they're not ice particles, you don't have too many other options. They're not space junk, they're not satellites, they're not meteors, because those objects don't change direction.
Dr. Mark Carlotto has 20 years of experience conducting digital image processing for scientific research.
These were not videos taken by someone in their backyard. These were taken aboard a U.S. spacecraft, so the integrity of the data cannot be questioned.
Dr. Kasha believes the UFO was miles from the shuttle, well out of range from a thruster firing, and that it was moving at an incredible speed.
If the object is as close as 10 miles, it went from 0 to 2,500 miles an hour in 1 second. And that's an acceleration of more than 100 Gs, which would kill a human pilot. And the technology we're looking at is just quantum leaps beyond anything we have on the Earth.
And what about the mysterious streak of light? Could it have been intentionally directed towards the unknown object?
You have a streak that goes through where it had been. One thing that pops into everybody's mind is that this is some kind of a missile or weapon system.
Kasha bases this theory on years of analytical, comprehensive study of the video. Could the double flash of light be the firing of some kind of sophisticated weapon? And if so, from where was it fired? At the time this event took place, the shuttle was on a course over the west coast of Australia. Curiously, there is a large American military installation near Alice Springs in central Australia. And it's the largest satellite intelligence gathering facility in the world.
何あれ何あれなんか変なもんだね。ロケットだね。怪しいね。
何ちょっと怖いよ。
なんだろうなんだろう
怖いよ。
ちょっと変なもんだね。なんだろ
う怖いよ。
UFO みたいなもんだけど、ロケットみたいなもんだよね。
怖いよ。
怖いね。
うん。ねえ、上からなんか降ってこない？
なんだろうなんだろう。
ねえ、何あれ？
わかんない。変なもんだね。
うん。何？
わあ、すごいすごいすごい。
ねえ、怖いよ。
すごいすごい。
怖いよ。
ちょっと何あれ。あれ、もう一本出てる、もう一本筋が。もう一本筋が出てる、ほら。下の方に。何あれ。
ねえ、怖い。お父さん怖い。
ちょっと待って。これ取っとかなくちゃ。
怖いって。
怖いね。
何あれ。
怖いね。
ねえ、原爆じゃないの。
なんだろう、ちょっと待ってわ。何あれ。
お願い。
何あれ。怖いね。ちょうどなんか月んとこ行くよ、ほら。
ああ、お願い、怖いよ。
なんだろう。
何
なんだろう。なんかすごいね。
ねえ、何
すごいね。なんか消えてきたけど。うわー、すごいね。すごいね。消えてしまった。終わったね。
今日
ロケット打ち上げかもよ、うちの裏の。
The Israeli Air Force shot down an unidentified flying object above a nuclear plant in the desert. The object appeared in a designated no-fly zone. The Israeli Defense Force says it has not found the debris yet to determine what it is, but the military says it followed procedure when the object was spotted. Honda is recalling 1.3 million cars. About 143,000 of them are in the United States.
Over a series of many years, there have been what are known as shoot-down orders given in relation to UFOs. In other words, the military have scrambled jets, intercepted UFOs and tried to bring them down. Rules of engagement are highly classified and something which, for obvious reasons, are not discussed because it would aid the enemy. But dating back to the Cold War and coming right through to the present day in the sort of modern security climate with 9/11 in mind, of course there are aircraft sitting on the runways, fully armed and ready to go at a moment's notice, and on occasion over the years, in Britain but in other countries too, these sorts of aircraft have been scrambled because uncorrelated targets have been picked up on the radar, UFOs, whatever you think they are, and pilots have tried to bring them down.
Military commanders have even classified this subject as ultra-top secret. Are these rumors true? Are UFOs really a state secret? On December 30th, 1947, faced with a growing number of UFO sightings being reported throughout the country, Defense Secretary James Forrestal set up an investigation committee. The Air Technical Intelligence Center, or ATIC, was located at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. The committee was known as 4th, 1948. Two pilots with Eastern Airlines reported having seen a bright cylinder-shaped object while flying over Alabama. Apparently, they barely avoided a collision. Things were getting tense for military commanders. They ordered Project Sign to produce a report assessing the current state of the situation.
That said, yes, UFOs are real. We believe they're interplanetary. This was a document that landed on the desk of Air Force General Hoyt Vandenberg. According to the story, Vandenberg said, "I'm not going to accept this conclusion. Give me something different."
1964, former U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Bob Jacobs was in the 1369th Photo Squadron at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. He was in charge of photo-optical instrumentation at a tracking site in Big Sur, 124 miles away. His mission was to film an Atlas rocket go through all 3 stages of powered flight. This particular mission was part of the Nike Zeus objective for the development of an anti-missile missile during the height of the Cold War. All cameras rolled as they heard liftoff from Vandenberg over their radio.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
We were looking down southwest, and the missile popped up through the fog. It was just beautiful. And our guys on our M45 tracking mount with 180-inch lenses on it got it. And sure enough, we could see all 3 stages of powered flight as they burned out and dropped away. And then, of course, to our naked eye, all we saw was a constant trail going off into subspace. So we whooped and shouted and heard the film wrap off in the BU telescope, and figured, well, that was our first big deal, and we got it.
Lieutenant Jacobs then took the cans of film down to Vandenberg to have them developed that night. The following morning, Jacobs was ordered to go immediately to the office of Major Florence J. Mansman, the ranking optical instrumentation officer in charge.
I walked into his office, and they had a screen and a 16mm projector set up. There was a couch, and Major Mansman said, sit down, and there were 2 guys, as I recall, 2 guys in gray suits, civilian clothes, which was fairly unusual. And Major Mansman said, watch this, and turned on the film projector. And I watched the screen, and there was the launch from the day or 2 before at Big Sur. As the Atlas missile entered the frame, we could see the whole 3rd stage, which has 2 rocket nozzles like this and one in the center, a gimbaled one in the center, filling our frame from about 160 miles. That was pretty exciting optics. And then on that telescope, we could see the warhead, the dummy warhead.
According to Jacobs, at this stage the rocket was traveling between 11 and 14,000 miles per hour when a saucer-shaped craft entered the frame.
It flew into the frame like this, and it shot a beam of light at the warhead. Now, remember, all this stuff is flying at several thousand miles an hour. So this thing fires a beam of light at the warhead, hits it, fires another beam of light, and then flies out the way it came in. And the warhead tumbles out of space. Now, when the lights came on, Major Mansman turned around and looked at me and said, were you guys screwing around up there? And I said, no, sir. And he said, what was that? And I said, it looks to me like we got a UFO.
Nearly 2 decades later, several letters written by Major Florence J. Mansman were obtained. In one dated March 8, 1983, Major Mansman corroborated Lieutenant Jacobs' story. In the film, the assumption was at that time extraterrestrial. Details would be sketchy and from memory. The shape was classic disc. The center seemed to be a raised bubble.
Now, Major Mansman said to me, after some discussion about it, he said, you are never to speak of this again. As far as you're concerned, this never happened.
In another letter, Major Mansman describes how 2 agents took the footage. They did not sign out for all the footage, but took out that part that showed the encounter and returned the rest of the film as a complete package. The one agent stated as he handed me back the film, that leaves you off the hook, but not off any disclosure. Understood? Naturally, my answer was, yes, sir.
Major Mansman never saw it again, and as far as I'm concerned, or nobody else ever saw it again. Certainly not at Vandenberg. I'm certain that it left Vandenberg and went somewhere else.
While the possibility of a nuclear missile being launched is still slim, a new, much greater threat has just emerged. During the Cold War, Russia manufactured over 100 nuclear warheads housed in briefcases. Today, over half of them are missing. Russian strategic missiles have the range to hit America or Europe. Tactical missiles are for local battles. The Russians have another nuclear device which is potentially more dangerous than any tactical or strategic weapon. The suitcase bomb. Easy to move, easy to operate, but hard to identify. They can be detonated anywhere. This man was Boris Yeltsin's science advisor. After becoming a key player in Russia's nuclear policy, he recently discovered the existence of the suitcase bomb. His name is Alexei Yablokov.
Маленькие атомные заряды существуют, совсем маленькие, несколько десятков килограмм, 30 килограмм, 40 килограмм. Они существуют. Я говорил с людьми, которые их делали. Я видел их.
From briefings given by Alexei Yablokov, we were able to build a model of the suitcase bomb. On the outside, it looks like an ordinary attaché case. Inside, it contains a timer wired up to a miniature nuclear warhead. The warhead consists of a plutonium core surrounded by explosives, which produce an extreme increase in pressure, precipitating a nuclear explosion. The system is activated by a key and can be set to detonate from anything from under an hour to several days. Enough time for whoever planted it to clear the vicinity.
Мощность такого маленького ядерного заряда около килотонны, 1 килотонны. Это очень много. Это значит 1000 тонн обычной взрывчатки.
The bomb was designed to destroy key parts of the enemy's infrastructure, such as entire bridges or airports. But 1 kiloton, a 16th of the power of the Hiroshima bomb, could have a devastating effect on a city.
Весь британский парламент превратился в пыль. Вокруг, если это будет взорвано на Пикадилли, то, наверное, километр вокруг Пикадилли будет одни развалины, ничего там не будет больше.
The blast would flatten almost all buildings within a 500-meter radius of Piccadilly, immediately killing up to 20,000 people. There would be further destruction and approximately 50% fatalities up to at least a kilometer radius. Within hours, the prevailing wind would carry the nuclear fallout as far as the M25. The whole of London would have to be evacuated. Congressman Kurt Weldon is heading a public inquiry into the danger posed by the suitcase bomb.
You'd have a massive loss of life, you'd have massive radioactive contamination, and you'd have massive havoc, unlike any that we've prepared for in the past. I would argue that the potential for a small atomic detonating device is even greater than the possibility of an accidental launch of a long-range ICBM.
The launch of intercontinental ballistic missiles is supposed to be governed by security codes. In contrast, suitcase bombs require no such codes.
Ведь не президент решает, где, в какую минуту, в каком месте взорвать эту бомбу. Получается, что тактическое ядерное оружие находится под меньшим контролем, чем стратегическое оружие. Мощность его много меньше тактического, но контроль тоже много слабее. Поэтому оно сейчас для общества становится очень опасным.
Midnight for a rendezvous in Moscow. Among the many military people privately voicing their concerns about the security of nuclear weapons is an officer directly responsible for weapons storage. Since he's serving in the army, it was necessary to conceal his identity. In 1996, Sergei, as he chooses to be called, tried to make his own storage sites more secure.
Сейчас эти
объекты, конечно, хотят снабдить современными средствами, техническими средствами охраны для того, чтобы исключить проникновение на территорию объектов или...
He said his job was to account for 132 as the chief advisor for defense to Boris Yeltsin. He said he could only find 48. We were startled. We said, General, what do you mean you can only find 48? He said, that's all we could locate. We don't know what the status of the other devices were. We just could not locate them.
Lebed was promptly sacked from government after just 122 days. He's now left Moscow for Krasnoyarsk, a huge province in Siberia where he's recently been elected mayor.
Back to the White House as we speak. It's a fairly long journey from Camp David, certainly by ground, to the White House, but it's overcast and not safe today here in Washington for a helicopter delivery of the president. The one suspects that he is going to be meeting with... Back to the White House as we speak. It's a fairly long journey from Camp David, certainly by ground, to the White House, but it's overcast and not safe today here in Washington for a helicopter delivery of the president. The one suspects that he is going to be meeting with...
Have UFOs shut down our government's defense systems? There is evidence that something caused missiles to malfunction during test launches. Former Air Force officers tell their incredible stories about the film that was confiscated by the CIA. What was on it? And why don't officials want us to see it? Find out right now on Larry King Live. Good evening. We begin with shocking allegations that UFOs have interfered with missiles at U.S. Air Force bases, and aliens are monitoring nuclear warheads and bombs. Our first guests claim UFOs have activated missile systems at 5 Air Force bases in 5 different states. They also claim a cover-up, that the United States government is keeping the information secret. Former Air Force officers and an investigator are here with their stories. Here in Los Angeles is Robert Hastings. He's author of UFOs and Nukes. I have the book right here. The book is available at ufohastings.com. He has been investigating sightings at weapon sites for years. Bob Salas is a former captain, U.S. Air Force Base. At the U.S. Air Force, he was at Malmstrom Air Force Base in 1967, where there were claims a UFO caused missiles to malfunction. He's co-author of Fated Giant. Bob Jameson is with us, former U.S. Air Force officer. He was at Malmstrom as well in 1967, and he says his superiors told him UFOs caused the malfunctions. And in Peoria, Illinois, is Dr. Bob Jacobs, former First Lieutenant U.S. Air Force, former U.S. Air Force photographic instrumentation officer. A UFO showed up on film that he shot in 1964 at Vandenberg Air Force Base, and that was later confiscated by CIA agents. All of our guests are named Bob. So I'm going to call them by their last names. We'll start with Robert Hastings. How did you get, what's your explanation for UFOs at nuclear weapon sites?
I can simply say after 35 years of research that these incidents have taken place. There are hundreds of declassified documents which indicate that UFOs have demonstrated a distinct and ongoing interest in our nuclear weapon sites. I've also interviewed nearly 100 gentlemen who were involved in these incidents at various Air Force bases. This is very widespread. What you're seeing here this evening is the tip of the iceberg.
How do they cause a malfunction? What do they do to cause something to not work?
I think that's probably still an unknown. I know that Boeing engineers attempted to duplicate some of the malfunctions. They did succeed in doing that, but they still can't determine what initially caused them. Bob Salas could address that.
Bob, what happened at Malmstrom in 1967?
1967, I was on duty as a missile launch officer. I get calls from my guards upstairs. First, I get one call saying that they're seeing strange lights flying in the sky, and I didn't pay too much attention to that. About 5 minutes later, the main security guard, the flight security controller, calls down, says he's looking at a glowing red object, very large, hovering over the front gate. He wants to know what to do. I tell him to secure the facility. We hang up. I go to tell my commander. So within seconds of that call, my missiles start shutting down. I recall losing all 10 of them.
You didn't see the object?
I didn't see the object because I was obliged to stay underground in the capsule.
By shutting down, we mean what?
By shutting down, what I mean is they were not launchable. They were in a no-go condition, disabled.
How long to restart them?
How long to restart? Well, I'm sure it took over a day, and maybe...
All right. Now, Bob Jameson, you were there too, right?
Yes, sir.
And you were in the Air Force?
Yes, I was in the Air Force.
And where were you when this was happening?
Yeah, I was a targeting officer, missile targeting officer. I was at home relaxing, and I got a call from Job Control to tell them to come in. A missile had gone down. My job as a targeting officer was to bring him back up. And so I went into...
So you didn't see the incident, you just went to the missile?
I went to the incident. I went to the site.
Where is Maelstrom?
It's Great Falls, Montana, just outside of Great Falls, Montana.
What did you make of the story?
Well, I know that it's true. I went into Job Control after I got to the hangar. I was called in, went to the hangar, went to the Job Control, and I noticed they have a map of the whole complex with green lights where the missiles are good, but there's one small area with 10 red lights. Means those missiles were out.
Is it possible they just malfunctioned?
That doesn't happen. Very rarely does a missile malfunction, and I don't think much more rare would be 2 at the same time, but never 10.
Now, Bob Jacobs, where were you? What were you filming, and where were you?
I was officer in charge of optical instrumentation at Vandenberg Air Force Base from 1963 to 66.
That's
our job
California?
was to photograph. That's California, so right there on the coast.
Right.
And our job was to photograph with high-speed instrumentation every missile launch from Vandenberg going down the test range. They wanted to find out if we could figure out a place to put a telescope where we could get a side view of the missile so that we could see all 3 stages of powered flight. So I went up to Big Sur, California, up on a U.S. Forest Service road on Anderson Peak. I installed a telescopic sight up there. The Air Force flew in a huge catadioptric telescope from the Cape. It was built by Dr. Walter Manning at Boston University. They put the telescope up there, and with that thing, which had a focal length of 2,500 inches, we photographed an Atlas missile raising up out of the fog cover and flying downrange. We got all 3 stages of powered flight, and as the dummy warhead and the package flew on down range, we were all celebrating the fact that we had seen the thing and accomplished the mission. When I got back to the base with the film the next day, I was called into the office of Major Florence J. Mansman, and there were 3 people in gray suits standing in there. There was a 16mm camera and a screen set up. Major Mansman said, "Lieutenant, sit down and watch this." And he turned down the lights, turned on the camera, on the projector, and the film came on. And I recognized it as the film that we'd shot at Big Sur the previous day. Toward the end of the flight, I was looking at Major Mansman saying, "Pretty good stuff, huh, sir?" And suddenly he said, "Just watch this." And as I watched, the warhead, the dummy warhead, the chaff that was put out in front of it as the decoy to deflect the Russian anti-missile tracking radar. Everything was flying along, and suddenly, in the same direction this stuff was flying at about 8,000 miles an hour, an object came into the frame, shot a beam of light at the warhead, flew up to the top, shot another beam of light at the warhead, flew around the direction it was flying, shot another beam of light at the warhead, flew down, shot another beam of light at the warhead, and flew out the same way it came in.
Well, I don't understand. Why didn't you see this when you were shooting it?
Well, it was 600 to 800 miles away from us.
Oh, I got you.
And they confiscated. Well, first of all, Major Mansman said to me, "What was that? Were you guys screwing around up there?" I said, "No, sir." And he said, "Then tell me what that was." And I said, "We got a UFO." And he said, "Lieutenant, you are never to speak of this again. As far as you're concerned, this didn't happen."
Hold on, guys. I'll be right back. I got to take a break. Okay, that's weird. You think there's a national defense plan for aliens? Sounds crazy. We'll ask about that next.
I'm not alone in witnessing something extraordinary. That's the bottom line.
Powerful beaming spotlights.
Angular and shape, like sitting on three legs.
No type of aircraft I've ever seen.
Rapidly maneuver and quickly disappear.
Accelerating to very high speed. Majestic triangular craft.
What we were seeing didn't resemble anything known to us.
Bob Jameson will make this clear. You were asked to say nothing?
I was not asked to say nothing. In fact, no one admonished me, and I did not sign an oath saying that I can't say.
There was no cover-up as far as you were concerned?
That's correct.
You just...
I can tell. I can speak about it.
You saw what you saw. Do you think there's a plan for invasion by aliens?
I wouldn't presume to know that. I just simply know that the U.S. government does not obviously appreciate people such as myself and these gentlemen speaking out about this. What we're describing on an ongoing basis, decade after decade, at multiple Air Force bases, is just disruption of our nuclear missiles.
We have an email from Kyle in Plainville, Massachusetts. Why would UFOs only disable U.S. defense systems and not another country? Is there a lesson to be learned in all this? Or do you think maybe... Bob Salas, they have disabled other countries.
They have. I know that there have been events in the Soviet Union where they have interfered there. They've been seen in just any country you can name, and they do disable communications, especially.
We have an email from Eric in Atlanta, Georgia. What can be done, if anything, to force the U.S. government and/or military to declassify and release all it knows about UFOs? Dr. Jacobs, when do you think that would happen? Do you think that would happen?
It would take a revolution in public opinion. The problem with this field is that it's surrounded by so many crackpots and weirdos who make a joke about it, that those of us who take it seriously and think that something is definitely going on that needs to be scientifically investigated are laughed at. The technician here in the studio where I am, I said we were talking about UFOs tonight, and her face lit up and she got that kind of look, which is typical of what happens to us. I think that we need a real scientific committee to be put together to look into these things. I think Robert can talk to this too.
Absolutely.
Bob Salas, you agree?
Yeah, I would like to make a comment real quick. The Air Force has perpetrated a fraud, especially in our case. They claim in their statement about UFOs that no UFO incident has ever affected national security, and we lost 20 missiles during the Cold War. They also stonewalled the Condon Committee at that time. The Condon Committee had heard about our incident and were told to go away. They said they were told that no UFOs were involved. And then the Air Force turns around and uses the Condon Committee as a reason not to further investigate UFOs.
Robert Hastings, in doing all these shows, what confounds me is, if all this is true, what are they afraid of? What's the government afraid of?
Victor Marchetti is a former high-level CIA official. He wrote the book CIA and the Cult of Intelligence in 1975, bestseller. CIA tried to prohibit that being printed. Victor Marchetti in 1979 wrote an article regarding what the CIA thought about UFOs. He alluded to rumors at the agency of crashed UFOs and the recovery of bodies of aliens. More to the point, Victor Marchetti said that, in his view as an intelligence analyst, he thinks that the power structures, the elite, the status quo people in every country on earth who are in on the secret are really trying to maintain their own power and status and don't want to rock the boat.
Email from Christian, Brighton, Colorado. When is the Air Force going to stop lying to the people and finally tell them the truth about alien visitation? The American people are paying their salaries, and they are supposed to defend and respect the Constitution of the United States of America. Bob Jameson, do you think we'll ever see it? Do you think we'll ever see an Air Force official, Secretary of the Air Force, come on and say, here's the story?
Perhaps through more programs such as this, we can get the public tuned to the fact that there are UFOs. They're not going to hurt you, I don't think. They haven't hurt anybody that I know of. And I think that perhaps through more programs such as yours and such as these people are bringing out.
And a government investigation.
And
an open investigation.
There's never been one, right?
Right.
Not really, no. I mean, in 1968 was the last congressional hearing on UFOs. 1968.
40 years.
40 years. We need another one. We need a strong one. Hopefully the next administration will do that.
There's been a lot of behind-the-scenes manipulation of Congress by the military liaison personnel.
Because of what? Fear of what?
Well, again, Larry, These gentlemen are talking about nuclear missiles being dropped offline. The Pentagon does not want the Russians or previously the Soviets to know that. It's going on in the Soviet Union, as Bob Salas said, but I have interviewed persons who are involved with Minuteman missile bases in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and they say this is continuing to occur. I've actually interviewed a gentleman a year ago who said that his missiles were activated by UFO. And I described that in detail in my book. I asked him to come on this program, and he declined, I think, because he's uneasy about talking publicly.
There are skeptics, not a surprise. Bill Nye, the science guy, is here when Larry King Live returns.
It does not contain any pattern of purpose or of consistency.
It was not a weather balloon, nor an aircraft, nor a missile. It was something else.
I don't know what they saw in 47, but I'm quite sure it probably was Project Mogul.
Nothing we had at the time could fit the description, size, shape.
Go to CNN.com/Larry King right now. Take our quick vote. Is the United States government hiding knowledge of UFOs? Let us know what you think. Joining our panel is Bill Nye, the science guy. He's a scientist, engineer, best-selling author, and Emmy-winning television personality. He's, by the way, a member of the Skeptic Society and a fellow with the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. Now, Bill, assuming that these distinguished gentlemen are not lying, we have 3 former members of the Air Force and Robert Hastings, who's looked into this for a long time. What's your thought?
Well, in the skeptical world, in science, we look at claims. We look at individual claims. So I noticed that we looked at the intro of your show and stuff. There's several UFO incidents all mixed together. But let's talk about the one in 1967, right? This is your problem at Malmstrom Air Force in Montana. So the nuclear missiles went down, right? So if you go look at the documents that these guys have offered, if I understand it, as evidence, you look at some, and you don't have to read it, but you see there's something blacked out, okay? Redacted. That's a guy's home address. They don't want you to publish your home address. Here's one with a whole bunch of people's office phone numbers and stuff, and it looks spooky and scary. Well, it looks spooky and scary. But it turns out that that day, or the day before, the power had gone out in some of the chiller units, the air conditioning, okay? And Boeing was called out. Boeing makes a Minuteman missile because all these things went down.
So the man who called him and said he saw something outside, he didn't see something.
Well, let me just say, when you see something, a lot of people see something. And a lot of people see things that are really they can't identify, but that doesn't mean they were, it's quite a leap.
So you're saying it's a coincidence. This guy thought he saw something, and the missiles go off.
And then when you talk to people who are there, it's very compelling. And these documents, just while you address this,
let him respond.
Well, when you respond, address that one of the officers suspected that somebody had been drinking. Okay?
I never heard that.
So
I never heard that claim that anybody was drinking. Let me say, first of all, the missile shutdowns had nothing to do with power failure. There is triple redundancy on power. We've got Montana Power, we've got backup generator, we've got batteries. Okay, the power.
You've never seen missiles go down due to a power failure.
Not really, because of all that backup on power. So this had nothing to do with power. Second point, the flight security guard that reported this was about less than 100 feet away from this object. He was looking at it through his window. It was right outside the front gate, right above the gate. It was glowing red object, pulsing. And that.
Okay, did you see it?
No, I couldn't. I couldn't leave the capsule. But within seconds after that report, the missile shut down. Now, was that a coincidence?
Well, it's hearsay, as we say.
It's not hearsay.
Well, you're saying that this guy told you.
Well, you're not saying. I'm not asking you. You don't think he's lying?
No.
All right. So the guy did tell him.
He did tell him, and he saw something. And coincidentally, the missile shut down.
Coincidentally, isn't that a weird coincidence?
Yeah. I've many times I've flipped a light switch and you hear a siren. I mean,
what if the same thing happened a week earlier? Only this time, 10 missiles go down. a lot of security guards see the UFOs right above the
or 5 other missile bases.
Okay, so
on
why haven't
repeated
we?
occasions.
Is that a coincidence too? I mean, you combine the
50s,
two. Are
60s,
those two
70s, and 80s.
One at a
It
time.
was
Well,
over
here's the thing,
100
it's not-
people, Bill.
Well, in science, it's not evidence.
I wish Edgar Mitchell were here, but in any case,
it may not be evidence, let's say, but it is certainly
100 people are telling the same story at different Air Force bases over a 40-year period. These guys were entrusted with weapons of destruction by the U.S. government, and there's 100 now who are coming forward and saying UFOs shut down their nuclear weapons.
Well,
we have mass psychosis among our nuclear missile forces.
In the interest of time, Dr. Jacobs, he takes pictures, he comes back, they call him in, they show him the pictures of this.
I saw it. I'm an eyewitness.
He saw it.
I'm not talking about.
And they confiscate it.
Yeah.
Why?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Hello?
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
You mind if I speak, Mr. Comedian?
Go ahead.
I was there. I saw the film with my own eyes. I'm not lying. Why would I? I'm a university professor with a PhD and a lot of years of good, respectful research. So the guys from Ulster may not have seen the UFO, but they saw the results of it. I saw the damn thing on film with my own eyes, so don't call me a liar, and you weren't there. I was.
With all due respect, I'm not calling you a liar. It's just quite a step to say there was a film with remarkable images on it that the CIA confiscated.
Which I saw and which they did.
Yeah, which is quite a step from there to say it was definitely a spacecraft from another civilization. That's the leap that the skeptical community is reluctant to take.
Hey, pal, listen to me. I didn't say it was a spaceship from another civilization. I said it was something in the air that we couldn't identify. Therefore, it was an unidentified flying object. It was shaped like 2 saucers put together with a golf ball on top, and it fired a beam that we assumed was a plasma beam at a dummy warhead and knocked it out of space. Tell me what happened. Tell me who did that. Tell me in 1964 who had that technology, pal. Not us, and not the Russians, and nobody I know of. So come on,
what's your conclusion?
What about it?
Well, so what's your conclusion?
What's your conclusion?
What are you saying? Well, my conclusion is that something happened that you don't know what it was, and I wouldn't be surprised if it had something to do with another aspect of military testing in the sky that night. And it's a much more reasonable explanation.
We had nothing. There was nothing in our inventory that could possibly
let's do this other little thought experiment, everybody. Okay, let's say this has been going on since 1967, routinely, right? There's an old joke in broadcasting.
Are you going to do this with baking soda and vinegar, Bill?
Hold on. We're running out of time.
It's an old joke in broadcasting. Well, it's like trying to photograph a car wreck. At one time considered an impossible thing to do. If you send out a news crew, let's go shoot a car wreck, that was a joke. Well, now, routinely, on the nightly news, we see car wrecks. We see car wrecks on the freeway, we see car wrecks behind us.
Why was it a joke?
Because there didn't used to be a camera everywhere. There are millions and millions of cameras. There are billions of digital pictures taken every week.
You're not saying there are no UFOs. You're saying that have been proven.
I'm saying that it's quite a step to see something you don't know what it is in the sky, to say that there are alien spacecraft that are monitoring our nuclear weapons.
Dr. Jacobs.
Well, I understand that.
Now, so if you're questioning what he's seen...
No, well, I'm questioning the conclusion that the technology did not exist in 1964 to produce images on film that the CIA would want to confiscate.
If I may.
Well, in 1964, you were trying to figure out what girls were. I was in the service in a scientific capacity.
So, sir, you can attack me.
Get off your skeptic high horse, pal.
Well, it just doesn't.
You're attacking us. You're the one who's making ad hominem attacks and saying that's quite a step. You bet it's quite a step.
One at a time, please. We got 2 minutes left.
The other former Air Force officer, retired Air Force officer involved in it, was charged with photo analysis of this film. Florence Mansman. He's now deceased.
Florence J. Mansman.
To his widow. I have correspondence, private correspondence between Dr. Jacobs and Dr. Mansman, actually. And 20 years later, they are marveling over what they saw. Mansman's professional assessment at Vandenberg in 1964 was that this was an extraterrestrial craft.
Okay, so he made that conclusion.
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
And I can send you, I will give CNN, I'm trying to get the national media involved in this as much as possible. I will send anyone, any correspondent for any newspaper, any radio station, TV station, any scientist, any member of your group, all of the original documentation where these gentlemen are discussing the subject 20 years later.
We're going to do a lot more on this because we do a lot on UFOs. We thank you all for coming, and we thank Dr. Jacobs. And when we come back, We're going to really get into it. A double debate. We're going to have a physicist, a lecturer, a researcher, and a documentary filmmaker go up against Bill Nye and Dr. Seth Shostak into a 2 versus 2 on this whole subject. Don't go away.
Do you think it's possible that it was from another world?
My Air Force training says I can't think that way, okay?
I know what I saw, and I get very upset, and I was wondering why they won't find out what it was.
Until somebody actually sees it, they have no idea. No idea.
A story this big, there's no way it could be kept secret from the public. What do you say to someone like that says that?
Well, somebody's kept it pretty secret for quite a while now.
4 distinguished gentlemen will now debate this reasonably. They are here in Los Angeles. Stanton Friedman. He's a physicist, lecturer, and UFO researcher and author of Flying Saucers and Science. James Fox is a documentary filmmaker and UFO researcher, the executive producer of Out of the Blue, and finishing up a new film, the working title Beyond the Blue. Bill Nye, our science guy, remains. And in Boston is Dr. Seth Shostak, the senior astronomer for the SETI Institute. That stands for the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. He's the host of the weekly radio program, Are We Alone? All right, Stanton, it is Bill's contention that, yes, people have cited things, yes, there are reports, but we don't know there are unidentified flying objects from other planets.
Well, you know, I admire Bill's courage. I can't imagine a well-trained scientist who's expert at communicating science to the general masses of people, who has courage enough to go on a national, international television program to talk about something which he hasn't researched, something which he knows nothing about, and pretend he's being a scientist about it. Frankly, I'm sick and tired of the debunkers making their research be proclamations. I mean, Bill showed a document with, you know, names redacted. How about this is a CIA document, it took me 5 years to get, about UFOs, not just names redacted.
Are you saying, Stanton, as a physicist, that there are unidentified flying objects that have come from other places?
Yes, I'm going beyond that. That's why the book is Flying Saucers and not UFOs. UFOs would be shilly-shally.
They'd be unidentified, yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying some
what
of
What
these...
are you saying?
Some UFOs are intelligently controlled extraterrestrial spacecraft. We're dealing with a cosmic Watergate, meaning a cover-up by the government. Right. And there are no good arguments against those two. And we're dealing with the biggest story of the millennium.
Before I have Bill respond, let's have Dr. Shostak respond. Doctor, what do you know or not know?
Well, you know, Stanton likes to say those of us who are not doing the UFO research shouldn't opine about them. And I find that not such a convincing argument because, frankly, I don't do black hole research. I'm an astronomer. I don't do black hole research. But I can read a paper about black holes and decide whether it sounds credible or not. Is the guy who did it, is he credible? Was the paper reviewed? Are other scientists convinced? Can I repeat the experiment? There's no reason that Bill Nye nor I can't offer a serious opinion on this subject. So I regret that he said that. Secondly,
you're not offering a serious opinion.
Oh, don't interrupt, son. Okay. All right. Let's bring in James Fox. Do you know that you're not a scientist, but a filmmaker. Do you know that objects have come from other places, not the Earth?
Here's my theory. Okay, we have
What's
two possibilities. Two possibilities. The observed phenomenon. By the way, I've got a little document here that was released through FOIA request. It's from the Air Materiel Command, General Nathan Twining, admitting on the 23rd of September 1947 that the phenomenon is real and not visionary or fictitious.
What do you know?
So basically, there's an observed technology for at least 60 years that one can easily establish. The ability to hover without making sound, without disturbing the air, and accelerate from a standpoint to out of sight in the blink of an eye. So either there's an agency within some government in the world that's in possession of that technology and has kept it under wraps for 60 years, and I can definitively say that.
Government could be ours.
And it's a terrestrial explanation. There's a terrestrial explanation for that technology, or there isn't.
Or the government could be ours, too.
Or the government could be ours. So,
which would explain its
Which would explain that they've kept this technology under wraps for 60 years or more.
Can you unequivocally, Bill, say that there are no objects coming from outer space? Can you say that?
Of course not. There are definitely objects coming from outer space. There's 100,000 tons of
alien
of dust that lands put a sheet out every night, you'll find dust.
Aliens.
Well, I'm very skeptical. You know, as we say in science, the simplest explanation is generally the best one. So here's our problem, I think. People are confident that the United States government has covered things up.
Right.
And indeed, if you read recent publications, stuff declassified last year, and I didn't write the book, but if you read something like Legacy of Ashes about the CIA has covered up a lot of things. And a couple times they got their own forces shooting at themselves because one part of the organization didn't tell what the other part of the organization.
What's your point?
My point being that the U.S. government could have accidentally led people to believe that there was a lot more going on than there really was. And so this ability of the U.S. government to create these rumors, generally inadvertently, may I say, has led people to have confidence that when they can't explain something by traditional means, it must be some amazing, never before experienced
let me get a break. We'll come right
phenomenon.
back.
Okay.
Where are these so-called space aliens coming from? What do they want from us? We'll ask after the break. There's still time to participate in our quick vote. Is the United States government hiding knowledge of UFOs? Head to CNN.com/Larry King right now and weigh in. Right now, yes, by the way, is in the lead. Before we continue, let's take a look at a clip from James Fox's new movie. It involves a Japanese airliner. Watch.
Picking up a hit on the radar, approximately 5 miles inshore, your 6 o'clock position. Do you concur?
The CIA said to all the people there, this event never happened. Who are you going to believe? Your lying eyes or the government?
Why is the government covering up, Stanton?
Why? In my book, I have a whole chapter on 6 reasons for it. You want to figure out how they work. You worry about the other guy figuring out how they work before you do, because they make wonderful weapons delivery and defense systems. You don't want them to know, you know, they know kind of thing. If a big announcement were to be made, there would be, what? Church attendance would go up, mental hospital admissions would go up, the stock market would go down, but there'd be a big push for an earthling orientation. No government wants that. And fourth, some of the religious extremists.
Okay. Do you, Dr. Shostak, believe that? Do you think there'd be a panic?
Nope, absolutely not, Larry. Polls have shown since the 1960s that something like 50-60% of Americans believe that we are being visited by saucer-sailing aliens that occasionally abduct you for experiments that are inappropriate on a first date, and nobody's rioting in the streets about that. New York Times announced it tomorrow. I think people would say, well, I knew it all along.
Our latest Associated Press poll shows 14% of Americans claim they've seen a UFO, and 34% say they believe in UFOs. Now, James, tell us about, you had eyewitnesses who spoke to in Arizona, right?
I've had...
Who told you they saw... They saw what?
There's a craft, it's a boomerang-shaped craft, it's up to 1 mile across, it flew extremely slowly.
1 mile across?
1 mile across, it flew extremely slowly, people had it fly directly over them. We're not talking about an ambiguous light off in the distance, directly over their house, so low they think they could have hit it with a rock.
How many people told you they saw it?
There's been over 1,000 people who have come forward. I've talked to at least 150 from all over the state of Arizona.
All of them report the same thing.
Including the governor of Arizona, who launched an investigation with the Pentagon and local Air Force Base, Luke Air Force Base.
And what happened in the investigation?
They shrugged their shoulders, so we don't know what that thing was.
All right. How do you respond? They're not lying, James. Bill, what do you think?
My recollection of this was the Air Force said they had a flight of F-16s that dropped flares that night. And it's a big V.
These people are describing
that was at 10 o'clock, not 8:30.
The real thing happened at 8:30. It started in the north and it headed all the way down.
So one explanation is
people couldn't tell time.
One explanation is that something happened in the evening and we have confused the time. Another explanation is there's an alien spacecraft.
Okay, so are
I'm
you open
open-minded.
to that possibility? As a skeptic,
Not in
you
the
should
case of the one in Phoenix, no, because
No.
at the time, in this case, no, look, I don't have the documents in front of me to be, in
You
all
haven't
fairness.
studied the evidence is what
So
it
that's where
boils
I'm
down
really,
to, Bill.
that's where I really disagree with you, Stan.
Well, hold on, let me
I've
just
studied the
can I
evidence
say one
pretty
thing?
well. I
This
remember very
craft-
well
Let
that
him say
night.
something.
Go ahead.
When this craft took off, and I talked to people across the state of Arizona, they said, had I blinked, I would have missed it. It didn't make any sound, it didn't disturb the air, it didn't make a sonic boom, and it was at least a mile across, including the governor of Arizona saw this thing.
And he's a pilot.
And he's a pilot, and he's a former captain in the Air Force.
Okay, but on CNN, we had footage of that.
No, there's been no
No,
footage
you
of
had
it. There's
footage
no footage
of
of
the
that.
flares.
Of the 10 o'clock
Okay.
flares. There's been no footage. I'm about to
Okay.
uncover some footage.
Let me get a break. And why do we presume that aliens, if they're out there, are so much smarter than we? It's an interesting question. We'll try for an answer. Phone calls, too, after the break.
Another civilization.
I don't know what it is.
That was Quinn that put that
You and I
together.
agree.
We're back. Okay, calm down. All right, Stanton, a good point from an avid listener. We've lived through many administrations of this. We've lived through
Yes.
Johnson, Nixon,
Yeah.
all right, a whole bunch. We've
Yeah.
had Republicans, Democrats, scientists.
Indeed, we have.
Nobody, all of them are covering up. Nobody, no official has ever said, I want to look into this.
As they say
president
around
works
Carter, Jimmy
keeping
Carter got
secrets
Jimmy
in the
Carter
US
on
government.
camera. I was the first person to get Jimmy Carter on camera saying that he tried to launch an investigation and he got nowhere. I got Gerald Ford as a phone interview.
How could a
He
president
did the same
get
thing.
nowhere?
He got
no,
nowhere.
he doesn't have a need to
Bill
know.
Clinton tried to make. Bill Clinton tried to launch an investigation.
So
into
the
Webb Hubble's
CIA is hiding all this from
book. We
presidents?
don't know if it's the CIA. We don't know. It's some sort of
Why?
quasi-government, quasi-military.
Well, here's the thing, the CIA hides
Organization.
stuff from the president, but that doesn't mean that they're extraterrestrials.
Well, why
That's
on
the
this
difference.
topic? Why Stanton on this
Because-
topic? Would there be a giant cover-up?
Because
Why?
it affects everything we think about ourselves. And as I said, if we make a declaration that indeed aliens are visiting, people are going to want to push for an earthling orientation. We have 300 million
what
people.
orientation? Say it again.
A new identity, instead of as Americans, Chinese, Greek,
So it'll be a
Peruvian,
new
whatever.
identity, okay.
Okay, who speaks for the planet? We're going to hold an election, right? But the Chinese have 1.3 billion. India's got 1 billion. We have 300
So
million.
there's a conspiracy
We're not
of
going to
governments?
give up that. They have a common goal, to stay in power. That's what government is all about, Larry. You know that.
Look at it on a smaller scale. Look at like what happened with 5 Simonton. 5 Simonton made a joke out of that sighting that happened in 1997. He had one of his aides dressed up in an alien suit. This massive craft flies over the state of Arizona. The governor said there was mounting pressure from his constituents to get to the bottom of it. There's growing hysteria. He holds a press conference. He has his aide dressed up in an alien suit, makes a joke out of the whole thing. And the reason why he did that, and he told us 10 years later, is because they didn't know what it was. And people were freaking out.
Seth, I have an email from Ann in Duncan, Oklahoma. UFO conspiracy theorists say the U.S. government is conspiring to keep extraterrestrial contacts a secret. Why wouldn't aliens themselves make their presence known to the world? If they can travel light years to get here, they don't need government permission for anything. Don't you think they would do that, Seth?
Yeah, oh, well, of course they would. Look, you just have to look at the historical analogs, Larry. 1492, Columbus lands in America. 10 years later, Spain is sending 25 ships filled with colonists to the Americas. Now, if you'd asked the North American natives 10 years after Columbus, do you think we're being invaded? It doesn't matter what their military wanted to do, what the chiefs wanted to do. They knew they were being invaded. It's been more than 60 years since Roswell, and as far as I can tell, my flights still take off on time from the local airport.
Nobody has
influence
said it
from the
wouldn't.
aliens whatsoever.
Why don't they come, James?
Well, here's the thing. I
don't talk to the squirrels in my backyard,
I asked
Larry.
this exact question to Edgar Mitchell, as Apollo 14 astronaut, 6th man on the moon. I said, why won't they just land? He said, he really looked at me and he said, well, think about it, James. Don't you think they want to, if you went to a distant world, don't you think you'd want to kind of just sit back and observe a little bit? I'm not saying that's
why
the
do they
case.
observe Wyoming and not Washington?
I'm just asking.
They do observe Washington.
Washington was buzzed in 1952. It was captured on radar, photographic evidence.
See, that's your
They scrambled
claim.
military. That's not a claim.
So
it's
what
a
do
fact.
you do? What do I do?
That's a
military
fact.
claim.
That's a fact.
Okay, what do I do as a civilian when the U.S. Air Force says, well, that was some flight testing we were doing and we covered it up? What do you do when they declassify all these documents?
Are they hiding this technology for 60 years? Maybe they are. But if they are hiding this technology, they shouldn't, because someone's in possession of technology that could really be beneficial to all of humanity. Because it's not Jet 82.
Exactly. Yes. So why would they?
I don't know. Maybe they're not. Maybe it is alien visitation. I don't know. I can't prove that.
So,
What I can tell you why the cover
you think aliens have visited here?
No question about it. It's not. The evidence is so powerful, and I wish that Seth, who, when he attended my lecture, admitted he hadn't read any of the 5 large-scale scientific studies.
What do they want, the aliens? Do you think? What do they want?
I got a whole long list. The bottom line is they're here to quarantine us.
Quarantine us?
Hey, we're a primitive society whose major activity is tribal warfare. I worked on fusion propulsion systems. Everybody in the neighborhood is going to know about fusion. That's what makes the stars work. Within a short time, we'll be able to take our brand of friendship, which everybody else calls hostility, out there. Remember, this is a planet that killed 50 million of our own kind.
So you're saying the aliens are afraid that we will take over their technology?
Didn't say that.
This is all speculation right now, guys. Why don't we start talking about the facts?
Okay, that's where we disagree, is on the facts.
Well, disagree on the facts.
Have you looked at Blue Book Special Report 14, the biggest study ever done?
We have government documents basically stating that these things exist. It's like...
Well, so, you guys, have you been to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base?
Of course I have.
So you can go. If you've been there, Larry, it's cool.
All kinds of areas you can't get into, Bill.
Everyone always talks about...
Yeah.
And I had a clearance.
They don't show you an alien, do they?
No, just that when you... I had security clearance for a while. Okay.
What would you do if you saw one of these things?
Oh, first of all, I would take a picture of it.
Okay, then what?
A good one.
Then what? Then what? Then what?
Then I would look at the picture carefully.
And then you'd laugh at yourself because no one would believe you.
Let me get a break. We'll be right back.
Okay, you guys.
We'll be right back.
Quite a step.
It's true. No one will believe you.
We'll be right back. Is that a cow? We're back. I'm trying to figure out, is that a cow?
Those are cows watching UFOs.
Einstein's theory of relativity. You can't travel faster than light, right?
Yeah, but as you get close to the speed of light, time slows down. So you can go 39 light years in 6 months pilot time if you're at 99.99% of the speed of light. And we physicists make particles that go 99.999%.
Yeah, but they become infinitely massive.
What about bending, warping, folding the space-time fabric? Brian Greene says
exactly. That's much better. You guys, no, but here's what I'm saying. That's a much better explanation that we don't know enough about physics. I love that. But Stan, you made a point before break that the U.S. Air Force will not let you see everything. I should hope not. I hope the U.S. Air Force has a few things up their sleeve.
I had 14 years under security.
But that doesn't mean that the stuff that you can't see at, for example, the Wright-Patterson Air Force Museum.
Let me get a call in.
Let's get a call in.
New Orleans, hello.
Hi there, how you doing?
Hi.
I would like to know, how often are eyewitnesses given a polygraph to prove that they're telling the truth rather than making up a story just to be on TV?
Are they, James?
It's happened.
Sorry. Are they giving polygraphs?
It has happened. Betty Hill passed one on national television.
Absolutely.
Seth, do you think...
If you want to pass a polygraph
can I say one thing about
that? Seth, you're a skeptic. You think we'll ever know the whole story? Oh, well, we never know the whole story.
Seth?
I probably can't hear us.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't hear my name. Look, I think the whole story, you know what the bottom line is, Larry, is this. Stanton has some insight into alien sociology. He knows what they want. He has failed to convince the scientists of the world. And when he does that, you'll have real investigation into this. It'll move from the area of fantasy to real science. I'm waiting for that to happen.
It's SETI
that's
why
the fantasy.
he can't convince them.
Okay, well, here's the problem. I just got back from meeting with the French CNS. It's the French equivalent of NASA. And France has, I don't know if people know this, but France just released their UFO files, which basically confirms that UFOs are real. And there's
They say that?
Yes.
France has announced
that CNES,
UFOs are real.
head of CNES, just released 50 years of UFO files. And I went to interview the guy, Jacques Patinet, just recently, and I said to him, wow, this is amazing discovery. How are the French, reacting to this? He said, no one's jumping out of windows.
By the way, not only is no one jumping out of windows, it ain't a story.
England it did get covered a little bit, not a whole lot, but a little bit.
Why not?
England, I don't know. England followed suit.
There's a lot of things.
You guys had a little show about it. England followed suit and released their documents. So I asked him, I said, what would you like to say to the American government? And he said, don't be afraid to tell the people the truth.
Exactly. So you see stuff in the sky that you don't know what it is. That doesn't mean that they're aliens that visit.
60 years of technology with no wings,
but
no
if
tail.
France announces, Bill, that they're there, why doesn't that impress you?
Okay, what's there mean?
50 years of scientific study. That's what it is. It is. It's been soil sample analysis, photographic
When I
analysis.
was young, you couldn't make an
radar
airplane
analysis.
without a vertical tail. Now you can.
Well,
that doesn't mean that they're
these things have been
aliens.
seen in our eyes for 60. I'm not saying they're aliens. I'm saying they are disc-shaped
Phenomena
craft.
that we
There
don't-
are physical
okay.
phenomena that defy physics as we understand it today, and it can be easily demonstrated for the last 60 years.
Do they defy physics?
No, it means we don't know how to duplicate it yet.
Oh.
That doesn't mean that it's impossible.
I didn't say
it means, look, I worked on fusion propulsion systems. That's what goes on in the sun. A lot of energy per pound of material. Back in 40 years ago, Larry, we haven't built a big system yet because it takes a lot of money and effort. When I was working on a nuclear airplane.
Guys, we're out of time. Thanks.
All right.
Another in our series
I
of
remain
programs,
skeptical.
Searching for an Answer. Go to CNN.com/Larry King for transcripts, ringtones, photo galleries, and more. Don't forget about tonight's vote. Is the United States government hiding knowledge of UFOs? And we've got a UFO commentary from the former Arizona governor. Our latest podcast, Barack Obama.